So the last one, let's conclude the idea of definiteness. Definiteness is a feature of noun phrase selected by a speaker to convey his assumptions that the hearer will be able to identify the reference of the noun phrase. So next one, or the second one, we have spatial taxes. So these didactic devices in a language commit a speaker to set up a frame of reference around herself. The idea of spatial, we are talking about space or locations. So take this simple example as adverbs of locations. So yeah, it refers to the locations of the speaker. So usually it is referred with the words here and also there. So when people say it's too hot here in the sun, so let's take our drinks into the shade of a there. So here and there, it refers to the position of the speaker here, and they are moving to another positions there. So it would be different if the speaker changed the positions from here to there, but they changed the sentence. So if the speaker moves, the interpretations of the adverb will be changed, or will change. They call the shade here and their original place there. So the first sentence, it's too hot here in the sun. Let's take our drinks into the shade of a there. They are moving from here to there. But as they arrive to that position or that locations, the locations, at first it is here, it changed into there. I'm glad that we moved here. I was melting over there. So spatial taxes here refers to the locations where the speaker located. So if we compare, later I will give you an example of a Mexican language. So in English has two terms of positions between these, items closer to the speaker, and those items further away or far from the speaker. But on the idea of the location here, we have the concept of plasticity. So it talks about how big an area is meant by here, depends on the context. It may refer to a country, a city, a room, or a part of room, and etc. So the use of here doesn't always have to include the locations of the speaker, because you can point a location on the map and you say, I live here, and it is not necessarily that you are there at the moment, but you can point a location without necessarily that you have to be in that locations at the moment. So if in English we have two terms, meanwhile in Spanish, we have three terms. In English we have here and there, talking about the positions here close to the speaker, there far from the speaker. Meanwhile in Spanish they have three. Aquí means here, ahi means just or there, and then ali over there. So pardon my pronunciations. If you have better pronunciations with this Spanish vocabularies, you may do so. So like esto, close to the speaker, eso, close to the addressee, and then aquilo, close from both, distant from both. Meanwhile in English, you have only here and there. In Spanish, it has three. And then move on the idea of spatial taxes, because we are talking about locations, we also can relate it with the idea of motions or movement. So didactic elements may also include information about motions toward and away from the speaker. For example, we have don't come into my bedroom. So it will be in contrary with don't go into my bedroom. So when a person say don't come into my bedroom, it is assumed that the speaker positions is in that room or in that bedroom. Meanwhile, when he says don't go into my bedroom, it is assumed that the position of the speaker is outside of that bedroom. So another example, he is going to leave the country. So the idea of spatial movement away from the speaker is mapped into times as a future event. Like he is going to leave the country, so there is a movement there from one place into another place, or from one location into another location. And about the size of the area is defined contextually. It may refer to a country, it may refer to a city, room, or part of a room. Let's move on. The next one, we have temporal or time deixis. As its name suggests, time deixis is a reference to time relative to a temporal reference point. Typically, this point is the moment of utterance. Temporal indexicals are expressed in time adverbial like now, and then, soon, lately, recently, ago, day, tomorrow, or yesterday. So if you know the time reference here, you understand that in English language we have tenses. So you understand how to use now, how to use then, how to use soon, and also how to use ago, because we are talking about specific time in your sentence. Because when you are using now, it talks about the current conditions. Meanwhile, when you are talking about ago, it talks about the past event. So another example, we have now and then. Yeah, talking about now and then, or yesterday, today, tomorrow. So you can relate it with the distinctions in tense, because when you use sentence in English, you have to use different types of verb in order to have an agreement with the time marker. So the next one is about the social deixis. So it explains about the social identities or relationship of the participant in the conversations. So in this idea, it has close relations with the concept of politeness and interactions that later we'll be talking about, because social deixis here, it talks about the relationship between participants. Certain participant needs to take or need to select appropriate vocabulary when they are talking to specific persons, because there is social norm here. So if we conclude that social deixis concerns the encoding of social distinctions that are relative to participant role, particularly aspect of the social relationship holding between speaker and the addressee, or speaker and some reference. It is expressed in different addressing terms such as ma'am, mom, sir, madam, and etc. Or if we put it in a sentence, you can say good morning sir, because that person is someone, or maybe your teacher, therefore you call him sir. It will be different when you are talking to your friends. You will not use this, or maybe you use the word sir like to make a joke with your friends. But because of the social status that this person holds, you need to use that because you acknowledge the social status of that person. Or thank you so much mom, because that person is your mom. Or you have specific vocabulary to call someone, or if he is from royal family, you call him your royal highness or your majesty, and so on, because there is social idea or social agreement that this person holds that word in its name or in his name. And then if we can conclude all the idea of deixis here when we are talking about person deixis, time deixis, social deixis, and also the last one later we'll be talking about context, how we can conclude all the idea of deixis. We can look at these pictures. That the proximity here refers to the positions of the speaker, and the distance here means talking about how that positions or how that locations are far from the speaker. So for example, the dative or the center, like I, here or now, I for the person, here for the spatial or spatial deixis, and now for the time deixis. So that's the center, deictic center. So when people say, for example, the position here, so space or spatial deixis will be there. So the proximity and also the distance. Meanwhile, when they are using the idea of time deixis, you can say that, okay, the proximity will be now. Meanwhile, for the Next one, you can have later, tomorrow, or soon for the future event. Meanwhile, for the past event, you can use before or recently or yesterday. So that's the the conclusions of the positions of deictic center, or the center of the person or the speaker, and then you can compare it with the positions of the idea or the hearer of that utterance. So what is the functions of deixis in language then? If we are talking about the functions of deixis in language, you need to understand that there will be no clear interpretations of language without any deictic expressions, because all of the aspect of language should be clearly interpreted, and how to interpret the idea in that language or in that utterances, that we have to understand the concept of deictic, because a language without deictic terms cannot serve the communicative needs of its users, as well as a real human language, because all real human language do have deictic terms. So, but what exactly is definiteness? So, traditionally in English we have the and also a as definite article and also indefinite article, because when you are talking about an idea that is only available one, that idea is only one. We are talking about national monument in Jakarta. There is only one national monument in Jakarta. We call it Monas. So that's definite because we have no other than that. Therefore, when you mention national monument, you need to use the. Why? Because there is only one. We have no other national monument in Indonesia. Or when you mention certain thing that you consider, that's what I'm talking about. Therefore, you need to use the rather than a, because a here it refers to an indefinite article. It can be anything. It can be any objects. When you mention book, a book, it can be any book. When you mention a house, it can be any house. Deixis helps speaker understand this concept. So it also has relations with the idea of context, because the context of an utterance is a small subpart of the universe of discourse shared by speaker and hearer, and it includes facts about the topic of the conversations in which the utterance occurs, and also facts about the situations in which the conversation itself takes place. For example, the exact context of any utterance can never be specified with complete certainty. The notions of context is very flexible, even somewhat vague. So when people are talking about certain ideas, people need to understand the context of that utterance, because it will be different if the same thing is uttered in different contexts, even though they are the same sentence. When we're talking about context here, you can relate it with the idea of definiteness, because facts about times and place very distant from time and place of the utterance itself can be part of the context of that utterance, if the topic of conversation happens to be about these distant times and place. For example, facts about certain people in Egypt could be well part of the context of a conversation in Britain 5 years later. So, how to relate the notions of context to the notions of definiteness? This is the rule. If some entity or entities, for example, person, object, place, and etc., is or are the only entity or entities of its or their kind in a context of an utterance, then the definite article the is the appropriate article to use in referring to that entity or those entities. So the appropriateness of the definite article is dependent on the context in which it is used. And then contexts are constructed continuously during the course of conversations, because as a conversation progresses, items previously unmentioned or not even associated with the topics so far discussed are mentioned for the first time and then become part of the context of the following utterance. So eventually, perhaps things mentioned a long time previously in the conversations will fade out of the context. But how long it takes for this to happen cannot be specified exactly, because in that conversations, people may also refer to the same idea that have been mentioned in the first or in the beginning of the conversations. So the idea or the relations of concept in each utterance is also can be called of context deixis, or the deixis of context, because how people relate the first or the idea in the first part of the text with the following idea of the text. So the last one, let's conclude the idea of definiteness. Definiteness is a feature of noun phrase selected by a speaker to convey his assumptions that the hearer will be able to identify the reference of the noun phrase. Usually, it is because the only thing of its kind in the context of the utterance, or because it is unique in the universe of discourse. For example, we have that book, the earth, or personal pronoun she is also definite. It can only appropriately be used when the speaker assumes the hearer can tell which person is being referred to. Another type of definite is noun phrase in English. We have proper names, such as the name of people like John, Queen Victoria, or the name of something, or the name of place. Personal pronoun like he, she, it. Phrases introduced by a definite determiner, such as the, that, this. For example, the book, the table, this table, or those men. By contrast, expressions like man, someone, and one are all indefinite because it may refer to any whom. So let's summarize these lectures. So the availability of deictic expressions make language a much more portable. We can use the same word on a different occasions at the different times and place. Second one, definite and indefinite referring expressions may be more or less appropriate in different contexts. The next one, the definiteness of a referring expressions tell us more about the referent itself, but rather relates to the questions of whatever the referent has been mentioned or taken for granted in the preceding discourse. The last one, the definiteness of referring expressions give the hearer a clue in identifying its relevance. Dear students, this is the end of our lectures on deixis and definiteness. I hope that everyone can have better understanding on the concept. So I'll see you on another lectures.
Terima kasih sudah menyaksikan video pembelajaran ini. Jangan lupa like, komen dan subscribe, serta nyalakan tanda loncengnya agar kalian tidak ketinggalan informasi update lainnya.